Involved, Ambassador Vasilakis, Ambassador Namlovsky. They were joined by senior colleagues from their foreign ministries, and we had a 2-hour session of these talks on what we call the name issue. There's been a hiatus of several years, 3 years exactly, of our discussions. And although we've had bilateral meetings, we've had telephone calls, we've had discussions on the sidelines of other meetings, but this is the first time back having a serious focus on the issue. And the atmosphere is a much better one, and from both Skopje and Athens, there is a indication that we should make an intensive effort to resolve this issue that has been outstanding for so many years. What we did at the first meeting was to outline the issues, to once again get the positions of the parties. I did not make any proposals myself, but try to facilitate both sides. Both sides were well prepared and articulated their positions, but showed a willingness, in my view, to listen to the other side, to understand their positions, and to think about possible solutions that might resolve the issue. So we have a few new members of the press here, but I'm not going to repeat what I said. It is that we've resumed talks in a positive atmosphere. What we agreed to was a series of meetings. So we're going to try to have meetings in every month, January, February, March, to push this process further. We've never quite done that before. We've never had the impetus, but both governments, both foreign ministries, both foreign ministers have urged us to make this a real intensive effort. So that's what we're going to try to do, and I'm hopeful that out of this process will come some resolution of this issue. I'll be happy to take any questions. Hi, yes.
Alan Masters from CNA. I would like to ask you, where are these meetings going to happen? Here in Brussels or Athens or Skopje, maybe?
Yeah. So we're talking about having meetings in New York at the United Nations, maybe a meeting in another meeting in Europe, not quite decided where, also at a United Nations site. Yeah. Yes?
From in Greece, do you have an end date? I mean, you're going to do these meetings next month, but do you have
the target?
Training and time?
Yeah. So, you know, we don't have a particular date, but I think the general mood is that the next months, certainly next year, is a year in which this issue can and should be resolved. So my own thinking as the UN representative on these talks is to make a real push to see in the next months whether we can get to some resolution. I don't think time is something that is in favor of a solution. And we've gone on for 20 years plus on this. Another 10 years, another 20 years, I don't think will be helpful in the process. So there's some very difficult issues here for both sides, and but I'll do my best to push to see if we can get a resolution in the coming months, certainly next year. Yeah. Yes, please.
Was there any progress this first meeting.
Yeah.
And do you have a better climate between
Yeah,
countries?
yeah. So definitely on your last question, definitely a better climate. I think that the climate emanates out of Athens and Skopje, that there's been a better atmosphere, better dialogue between the governments, and an absence of really serious irritations. So I think the atmosphere is better. Progress, I don't like to use the word progress in these talks because what does it really mean? It's, either we get a solution or we don't get a solution. I will say that the two parties were listening closely to the other side. There was good dialogue back and forth directly between them and on the issues, and listening with constructive tone that made me feel that there's enough flexibility in the minds of the parties that maybe we can find some solutions here. But you know, I don't want to give false hopes either. Yeah, yeah.
Flexibility in both parties?
Flexibility, yeah, but I'd say both parties were very constructive. Both parties listened carefully to the other side, and both parties were willing to listen to possibilities. Yeah, yeah. In the back there, and then.
Ms. Maria Moni from Athens News Agency. You said that your next meetings is going to take place in New York and in Europe, also when?
Yeah, so we're trying to figure out the dates, but there'll be. What I'd like to do is have a meeting in January, a meeting in February, a meeting in March. And we're trying to work out the dates now. I suggested some tentative dates, but Ambassador Lomovsky, Ambassador Vasilakis, they've got to figure out whether those work. And New York, we'll try to do some in New York, of those, maybe all of them in New York, but maybe one more in Europe here. Yeah, Vienna or Brussels. Yeah. Yeah.
The other side, maybe one of the other side.
No, there were no, well, people, both sides reasserted positions they had previously made and discussed where they stood on the issues and what their thinking was of their governments. So, but I won't say there was a concrete proposal by either side. There was just good discussion of the possibilities. Yes, sir?
Ioannis Antipas from πρώτο θέμα in Greece. What are the reasons in particular that you think that there is a better climate in terms of the talks right now?
Well, I don't want to get into my analysis of the politics in both countries, but I think the government of Skopje, the new government of Skopje, has definitely made this a high priority, and it seems to be determined to try to break the deadlock in the relationship with Greece and move forward on the Euro-Atlantic program. And there's been an absence of activities that irritate, you know, the relationship. I think in Athens, the government has, and the foreign minister particularly, but also the prime minister, have made statements that indicate a desire to resolve this issue. Obviously, they have their points of view on how it could get resolved, so, but nevertheless, an interest in it. Solving problems in the region is very important to Greece, and it would, I believe, strengthen Greece's position in the region and lead to a much more secure region in a difficult time internationally if this issue were resolved. So I think it's better, and I think people in both countries seem to feel that after all these years, maybe it's time to get this thing done. Yeah, Yeah. Yes, sir. And then, yeah.
Since after 27 years, besides the new positive climate, what new we might expect in terms of names, especially, and also the government is always said that if there are talks about the identity issues, then the discussion will not be fruitful. What do you think about that?
Well, I've heard those statements. So the discussions about the issues are discussions about the issues. So I think that both sides have to be satisfied that they will get a constructive resolution, and I think that will happen. Otherwise, there'll be no agreement. After many years, is there some new magical name going to appear? I doubt it very much. This issue has been discussed over and over again. There are many possibilities. What needs to be done is for people to rethink their positions and to find the best possible solution to a difficult problem. So it will not be solved magically. It will be solved by political will, good diplomacy, and we have two good diplomats here, plus the foreign ministries. So I think that that's the answer: hard work and political will. Yeah.
No discussion on the identity issues.
You know, everything involves identity issues. I mean, just when you mention the name, it involves the identity. It depends what you mean by identity issue. This is a really sensitive issue, but I feel comfortable that we'll avoid anything that will make it impossible to solve the problem. Yeah. Your last question. Yep.
Yes, very short. I'm George Yokos from
Yeah.
TTP. 3 questions, very short. Why now, the new beginning? And if you have red lines on the talks. And the third one is if you are looking for a name with 1 or 2 words.
Okay. Why now? I think I answered that. First of all, the now should have been 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I mean, when you have an international issue, that's a real problem. You try to solve it. And sometimes it's impossible because there's no government in place. Sometimes one country is totally preoccupied with some other major issues, so they can't focus on this. Sometimes the atmosphere isn't right. But right now, as I mentioned, I think the atmosphere is right. I think you have governments in both Skopje and Athens that have a will to solve this, that have good leadership, and therefore this is a good time. Do I have a red line? No, I don't have a red line. I'm a UN mediator. I do what I can to help the parties come to a solution, and obviously if they can't come to a solution, then people have to rethink whether there's a process is necessary. Yeah. Last question.
One word or 2 words?
Whatever the parties decide. I'm not going to predict what the name is. 1 name, 2 names, 3 names, 5 names, you know. Yes, sir.
Do you expect to have any European input in the process from the European Commission? I mean, and would you also expect that you might find a solution before the next assessment of the European Commission for the
Yeah.
beginning?
So the European Commission, I've talked to the European Commission. I'm in constant communication with Commissioner Hahn and others, but not. They don't play a role in this particular process. This name issue is under Security Council resolutions and under the interim agreement. The Secretary General of the United Nations is charged by both parties for facilitating these talks. But obviously, there's an interest in the EU and the European Commission on this, and so there is obviously conversations with them. I don't have a prediction, or even a target to resolve it before or after any particular EU-related date. I think that would be foolhardy to try to set a target date connected with other initiatives. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks.